welcome to your personal birth chart reading, Adam. And welcome everybody else that are curious. Because Adam so graciously allowed us to make this birth chart reading public, because we've been getting a few comments, kind of just like asking for us to read subscribers' birth charts, which we actually already do. If you go to partytrickastrology.com/shop, you'll see where you can purchase a birth chart reading from us. But it seemed that you guys thought that it would be very beneficial for you to see us read a birth chart and for you to understand like kind of
what it's like,
what goes more in depth into birth chart reading. I don't know really. But
and I think it is a valid thing that I think we should have thought of, but we just didn't, because we are very different in our birth chart readings than our Drag Me versus our videos versus our skits, right? So it might be helpful if you're curious. This is just, an advanced birth chart reading.
Yeah, which is why it's an hour long.
Yeah, and we also follow questions sometimes. Not all the time, you could just do a generalized one. Mm-hmm. But Adam asked quite a few really awesome questions that we're going to be kind of reading his birth chart through the lens of, more or less. So yeah, if you have anything specific, you can ask that, and the link will be down below to purchase them. But okay, now we're gonna stop addressing everyone. And just
we're not gonna talk to you guys anymore. Bye.
This
is now to you,
Adam. So
okay, so
welcome in. And I'll actually put his birth chart information. He's okay with that, right? Down below. So if you want to see what his birth chart is, if you're curious, you can. Mm-hmm.
So, bye. I'm really happy with the questions that you asked personally. I think that these are really good questions for your birth chart. So you were saying that people are like telling you that you should be a counselor and if there are any leanings to that. So we're going to kind of highlight what in your birth chart may be leaning towards that.
I will say off of first that I was like moon in the first.
Yeah.
I think if you're a moon in the first person, people are going to be like, you make me feel so emotionally comfortable, like you should counsel people. Which is kind of odd to hear from a Capricorn rising, like to be said to them, but if you got moon in there, if I know people that have moon in the first house, they're just always told that, Then you also asked about social and interpersonal blockages that you might have, and any blockages towards relating to other people, which we're gonna kind of group into like the same thing because they kind of bleed into each other. And then also how you're mentally inclined but physically lethargic, and that you seem to have this really great ability to picture things artistically but unable to translate them physically actually. So I hear the word blockages and I immediately think interceptions. Duh.
And this is truly like exactly your interceptions speak so much to the blockages that you're feeling.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You have a Leo Aquarius interception, and it's held in the 1st and 7th house. Mm-hmm. Now, Leo and Aquarius are both so much about the other. It's so much about interpersonal relationships.
Leo, and what is 7th house? Interpersonal relationships.
It's all about identity and community. That's the kind of like back and forth. Even though Aries is identity, Leo is, it's ruled by the sun. So it's a lot about the ego. And so let's start with Leo. You have Leo intercepted in the 7th house. With having just Leo intercepted, there's a difficulty
finding your light.
Yeah, finding your light, finding your ego, finding it appropriate for you to let yourself shine. Mm-hmm. Like that is something that was repressed.
Yeah, like you're somebody who, for example, like feels very uncomfortable getting a picture taken, and you like to cover your face, and you don't like to be seen, you don't like attention, it makes you feel very, very uncomfortable, and you just never have been. You don't understand how people can just go out and have everyone look at them and be comfortable in that. You're like, how can you be comfortable having people look at you? You kind of are somebody that might try to more or less blend in, not because you're not your own person, but because you have a Leo and Aquarius interception that makes you feel uncomfortable with those parts of you. Mm-hmm.
Especially because your sun is already in Libra, and Libra is about the other.
Blending in.
Yeah, and Libra is actually the sun sign that is in its fall. Mm-hmm. So to already have the sign
of your ego.
Yeah, the sign that is ruled by the sun intercepted, and then having your sun in its fall, there's a lot of difficulty with your ego. And then it is intercepted in the 7th house. So wherever Leo's intercepted is wherever you feel the most invisible. So that makes it really hard to have interpersonal relationships. It makes it really hard to have one-on-one relationships.
You feel invisible in the relationship.
Yeah.
Almost. Like you probably get stepped on a lot, which is interesting because your Capricorn rising does demand that kind of respect a little
But you're
bit.
also a Libra, which is...
But you're a Libra at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so you might put on this facade of like, I have boundaries, blah, 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 but like...
They're easily walked over.
They're easily walked over, especially emotional boundaries, but we'll get into that later. But
So it's also a difficulty of speaking up for yourself and just being less inclined to be social. Because Leo is all about, you know, like showing off the self and being social.
Yeah.
And the 7th house is about interpersonal relationships. And to have that intercepted there, you just don't have as much of an inclination to be social. Or you just feel like
which is
it's
tough
a
because
blockage.
Libras love being social.
Yeah.
Libras want to know anybody, and especially with your sun in the 9th house, like you really want to broaden your horizons and get to know people, but you probably find that that's your hardest.
Yeah, I think blockage is a really good word for that.
Yeah, it's your blockage because you want that, but you can't seem to get it.
It's another thing, especially with a Libra sun and this interception, taking initiative is another difficulty, which you were speaking to being physically lethargic versus mentally active, and we'll get into that with your Mars and everything, but this is another inclination of, you know, having difficulty with initiative. And then your Aquarius is intercepted in the 1st house.
Yeah, so this is really speaking to being an individual.
Yeah.
And owning your uniqueness and being able to stand out, like, especially with the Capricorn rising. You just dress like the herd. You can't wear something the slightest bit weird. Like, even as a Halloween costume, you probably still, like, will go as people that might, like, that people have done before that. And I think it really stands out, like, I'll go as a ghost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
it's just hard to own that, like, you already don't like being the center of attention, and you already don't like that part of you that says, like, I'm a unique individual, this is my weirdness. So it just, like, yeah.
yeah, and specifically an Aquarius interception, it is masked with Capricorn. So what I think it comes out of is that from an early age, you just found out that it wasn't going to be tolerated and it wasn't practical to try to stand out. Like, there was just no point because it wasn't going to be tolerated.
Yeah, it's a very practicality sign. It's you're like, why? You probably... Never mind.
And you want to, like, you have this urge to blend in also because you're thinking about your public persona, you're thinking about your reputation, and it's just a safer choice to blend in.
Right.
And especially with this all happening in the 1st house, it's very relevant. So you want to keep your public image, you know, untainted and safe, but it's at the expense of, ultimately you do kind of have a will to kind of express your individuality, but you're just giving that up to be safe.
Yeah, it's about that comfort zone.
Yeah, and now along with your interception, you have double Gemini and Sagittarius. So wherever you have double in compensation for your interception is kind of shows where you compensate for your interception. So it's funny because you're talking about, and we're talking about, blockages in interpersonal relationships. But Gemini and Sagittarius are both social signs.
Yeah, it's the other fire and signs.
But then it's different because they're kind of like information oriented.
Yeah.
So to deal with your kind of antisocial tendencies, you take the intellectual approach instead of like taking the kind of more emotional approach. You take it in a way of you're people oriented in the way that you intellectually break them down. You kind of like psychoanalyze. Psychoanalyze, but just like collect data.
Even for yourself, you might collect data about people to figure out who you are. You know what I mean? And you go, I'm not a people person, but if I can be smart enough to talk about a broad array of topics, then I can hold a conversation with anyone, and that's how I can make friends. I think that's kind of the compensation.
Yeah, it's kind of like your crutch or your security blanket to fall back on.
It's like, well, I know a lot, I'm smart.
Yeah, it's almost like your party trick, you know, to like get you out of an awkward situation because you have like antisocial tendencies. You need to have that kind of like security blanket, that crutch to be like, oh, well, I have these talking points that I can get on. And so specifically relating to Gemini, you're a people observer.
Yes.
And you can
people
also...
watching?
Yeah. And also, this also ties into you being a Libra. You can mimic
You know? Oh yeah.
You can.
Yeah, that's so funny. Mutable. It's double mutable. You can change yourself into other people. What you think maybe other people might want a little bit more. Yeah, and use that Libra charm.
Yeah, and then I think with your double Sagittarius, you're really looking to things like astrology to teach you about yourself and to teach you about other people.
Yeah, plus you have 7th house stuff.
Yeah.
So that's always
a big
an
indicator.
inclination that you're into astrology.
You also have 2 planets intercepted because your moon is in Aquarius, so it's intercepted. We'll talk about that first. And that's just like, that's another big thing that points to detachment.
Yeah.
First of all, it's in Aquarius.
Which is already kind of a little bit less of an emotional sign than most.
Especially in a moon placement.
Yeah, yeah. And then it being intercepted, you can't even access what emotions you do have.
Yeah, so I think really what's hard is to feel things viscerally. To like actually feel things.
Just naturally let a feeling come over you. You're probably, with all that air and the Capricorn rising, it's all intellectualized. It's all, should I feel this way? But for whatever reason, people probably will see your feelings before you do because your moon is in your 1st house. It's like you haven't even realized that you're sad yet, and people are saying, oh my god, is everything okay? And you're like, oh, since when? And then later on you're like, oh, this plus this plus this equals sadness. Oh, this is sadness. Okay. You know?
Yeah, and that's what you have to do. You have to like connect the dots into order to actually connect to the feeling. You know? And 7th house issues speak to, you know, having other people show you what you need. You know, you can't do it necessarily on your own. And having it be intercepted in Aquarius, it's just a lack of being able to recognize feeling, because you weren't nurtured necessarily. You don't remember feelings of being nurtured. So that's a huge thing lacking in your development, and it's a struggle that you have in like actually performing. Like performing nurturing is difficult for you because you don't have a recollection of what that's like. And then also with your moon in Aquarius, you feel like at the core you are very different from other people, which is going to keep you from being able to fully express yourself or like feel connected in interpersonal relationships when you feel so different.
Yeah, and you're probably taught that different is not right. As a Capricorn ascendant, you were like, there's no time to be whoopee whoopee or like woo or be like nah, you know. There's only time to be here, now, structured, this, that. And what's interesting is it's your mom, when your moon is in your 1st house, it usually says like your mom nurtured your emotions and it was kind of like right there in the forefront. But maybe she made your emotions the forefront, but the fact that like if you showed any, it was pushed down, or if you showed any sense of going outside what lines were given, it was, you know, it was not okay. And you probably feel like you had to parent yourself a lot, especially as a Capricorn rising. And yeah, so there's just a lack in understanding the emotional nurturing, like Nina was saying, but also like you probably really don't like the weirdness in you.
Yeah.
You know, you probably have a lot of resentment for it.
You have a lot of things in your chart that point to wanting to conform.
Yeah. And I think that there's no use fighting.
Yeah. I feel like you were made to feel bad about it. You were made to feel bad about your uniqueness, but you shouldn't. And harkening back to like the feeling of that you're very different, which you don't like.
Makes you super uncomfortable.
You can probably have a handful of moments that you can pick out where you can just say like something like your reaction is can't relate. You know, like you can't relate to XYZ of what someone else is expressing.
Yeah.
And you can't connect because it just takes, for you, it takes a couple extra steps to get there. It takes a couple extra adding things up to connect. But you might not let yourself go there. Like that's Aquarius moon, is it takes you a couple extra steps to connect. Intercepted moon doesn't let you go there for fear of if that happens, you could lose control.
Yeah, they'll see this part of me that I'm not even comfortable with. And that just adds to your 7th house interception. And if you're ready to get into Saturn.
Yeah. Saturn intercepted in the 7th house.
Yeah.
In Leo.
So that just is such a huge indicator of really having trouble with relationships, but also all your lessons are coming from relationships, but you're not understanding why those lessons are coming in the first place.
Yeah. Relationships are like a huge forefront of your personality just by having Saturn in the 7th house. Then having it, and also having Saturn in the 7th house is what's indicating you going through a lot of lessons through relationships.
Like you can't just be friends with someone.
No.
You gotta learn shit through them.
Yeah.
But you don't understand what you're learning and why.
Yeah. What I like to talk about in the Saturn intercepted front is something that I call, what do I call it? I wrote it down. I call it baby at the doorstep syndrome.
Oh, right.
Because you have
I
you have an issue with responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean that you're irresponsible.
I don't see that.
It could be that you're irresponsible. I don't see it either. But it could just be like owning responsibility for things. Because when your Saturn is intercepted, your lessons are coming from like all over the place and you can't see like A to B, like how it got there. Like, what did I do to make this happen to me? You can just feel like a total victim because it's coming out of nowhere and you can't logically be like, oh, well, I did this, but so naturally this would happen. It's more like complicated than that. It's more roundabout than that. Like it could be like
you can't it's like
you pushed the domino a while ago.
Yeah.
And then it caught up to you and it seems like, whoa, how did this all fall down all of a sudden? But it's baby at the doorstep syndrome, right? You can't let yourself fall victim to not knowing where your lessons are coming from. Because if a baby shows up on your doorstep, it's not your fault that it showed up at your doorstep, but you're responsible for it. You know, you have to take on that responsibility. You have to call into action, which is a weakness of intercepted Mars, is to feel like you fall victim to your lessons. Intercepted Saturn is to feel like you fall victim to your lessons.
And the other issue with an intercepted Saturn is that if you choose to leave that baby on the doorstep and say, I didn't put it there, Saturn's gonna just bring another baby every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it's just gonna
cry and poop
and it's just they're gonna wind up infiltrating your apartment somehow anyways. So it's better to, you know, go, I don't know why this baby is here, but it's, you know, me leaving it there is gonna make it worse.
Yeah.
You know, and you really have to own up to the shit that doesn't make any sense as to why it's being thrown at you, because intercepted Saturns, sometimes you get stuff thrown at you for no reason, you know, or you think no reason, or it doesn't really make any sense, but you can't just leave it there anyways. Even if you've already gone through it and you still don't, you know, I don't know. You just kind of, I think it's a, like a karmic thing, like a past life catching up. You know what I mean? More than anything.
And having it be in your 7th house, you can probably have the tendency to put it on the other person. Like, they did this and this is why I'm learning this lesson. You know, that is what can happen a lot. And
this person came into my life and it's their fault, and if I hadn't met them, then I wouldn't have to deal with this.
But this is another thing again that puts another blockage in your interpersonal relationships. It feels like you can't hold on to a relationship. It feels like you can't just like make something last. And it's because Saturn is there teaching you through your relationships, and they have to like crumble down in order for you to, I mean, it's not Scorpionic, it's like you have to crumble down to build it up stronger, but to just like go through, you have to climb a lot of mountains to get to like the biggest mountain where you're actually going to get to the top and succeed, you know?
Yeah, this is definitely a placement that says like, don't get married before your Saturn return.
Yeah.
And this is also something that, like, if you were to just have the perfect relationship and marry your high school sweetheart, you would learn nothing. You wouldn't grow as a person. Like, maybe you'd look back and miss out and blah, 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 blah. So it's a lot of shit to go through at first, but like, if you know, keep on taking those babies that are left on the doorstep and nurturing them and sending them off into the world, then Saturn will reward you. Somehow.
And you already are like in your later part of your life. Like, later part of your life, it doesn't mean like you're old, you're dying, but like in astrology, it just means after your Saturn return.
Yes.
So.
Because I think if I remember that I calculated it, and I think you're 41 years old.
Yeah. 1977.
So maybe there's a relationship for you now.
Yeah. Then, so that's kind of like the issues that we were able to detect for your, as far as you feeling like you have blockages in interpersonal relationships and relating. I will say, however, that your intercepted moon, or your moon in Aquarius, gives you a good advantage towards
overcoming it.
That too. But for counseling is what I was going to say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
For counseling, because it's the humanitarian. Aquarius is the humanitarian, so it's very people-oriented, and you can detach, which can be a good thing in counseling, so that you're not like...
My counselor, my therapist has an Aquarius moon.
Mm-hmm. So you don't get like too invested and go home with it and feel icky about it. And if, like, for example, couples counseling, you're not gonna like get invested into one side. You can.
You see both sides.
You're a Libra as well.
God, you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe that's what you should be doing.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good asset for a counselor, I would say.
Yeah, and just really quickly, I'm not going to touch on this too much because but I don't think that's the only thing that's saying interpersonal blockages, because I think anything in the 8th house that makes you secretive and you give yourself that block with your interpersonal relationships, you know what I mean? Not that it's your fault, but you have a guard up of some sort, you know what I mean? And Neptune in the 11th, that's just disillusioned by people. So you probably got disillusioned by a lot of people and realized, oh, dang it, like I need to be more careful, and that made you even more like anyways.
Now, talking about your the tendency that you might have to be intellectual versus active, right?
Air sign.
You're an air sign.
Air sign.
You got lots of air and fire.
Air Mercury.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about your
pretty
Mercury.
Intellectual.
Your Mercury is in Libra in the 9th house. So already, Mercury in Libra is another indication of a counselor, because you're very tactful, you're very diplomatic.
Very like, let's hear both sides. I'm not gonna pick a side until I know the full story.
And it gives you an indication to be polite and nice. You're not rub people the wrong way.
Yeah, swear words, you kind of can turn those down. You can talk kind of beautifully, and you want everything to be peaceful, and you're not going to scream at anyone.
Yeah, and your communication is also relationship oriented. You're really thinking about people as you speak. You're thinking about how it's going to...
The other person's going to take it.
Yeah, how they're going to take it.
If you do buy an advanced birth chart reading, my camera will always cut out a few times.
Yeah.
So that's something else that happened. That's just what happened now. But we were talking about Mercury in Libra.
Yes. So we were talking about how you play devil's advocate, and that isn't. So your Mercury is in Libra in the 9th house. Mercury in Libra, kind of wants to keep the peace, but in the 9th house, you always want to bring up, the other argument, and like talk about philosophies and musings on things, and you can just like kind of play devil's advocate because it's that combination of, for the sake of the argument. Getting the other side, and also just being a little more provocative. Like the 9th house will make you a little more provocative than a typical Mercury in Libra.
Just kind of say what you want, say it as it is, more than most Mercury in Libras.
Yeah, and you're also very enthusiastic about communicating and sharing your knowledge and sharing your like musings and philosophies on life.
Yeah, and it just makes you a very mentally stimulated person.
Exactly.
In general. I think just thoughts come to you really fast, and you have a lot of like, yes, this is good, right?
Yeah, then let's get into your Mercury aspects. Okay, we are going to talk to the audience once more. So a lot of people ask us about like aspects in the comments, and this is something that we'll cover in a birth chart reading, because seriously, I can't imagine a series in which we would talk about aspects. It would be very like boring and long and impossible to cover.
And when you're trying to no, that sounds like hell. I would hate it. I don't want to do that. Nope.
So we do that in birth chart readings. But Adam, your Mercury is sextile Saturn, so that's another thing that will just like make you more mentally organized, make you kind of have good focus.
Yeah, and it might add some time to your thought process, but I think that could help you out because you kind of need a little bit of a slowdown with that Mercury in Libra 9th house energy. So I think this just helps focus it more than anything. And you might not be as like, as a lot of people with these similar placements.
You also have good long-term concentration.
Right.
So you can focus on things for an extended period of time. And that's good. I think this is as far as Saturn aspects go, this is a pretty great one.
Yeah, I would say Mercury specifically sextile Saturn. It's one of the best Saturn aspects because all of them are trash. But this one, I think, just adds, a lot of concentration, and that's nice.
Now getting into your Mercury square Mars. So this can be an indication of, because your Mercury is your thought process, your intellectualism, and Mars is, your go-getter energy. So having those things squaring each other, it's like they're not really on the same page. So that could be like you're thinking about all this stuff and you want all this stuff to happen, but when it comes to the execution, they're not really able to line up. And honestly, when you think about it, how many people really do execute everything that they think about?
Yeah, or are able to put from what they think onto paper perfectly.
Yeah.
It's more, I think of that more as a skill, and people having more trouble with that is kind of
more of the norm.
More of the norm, honestly. Maybe not, obviously some people have more trouble than others, but I would say it's more strange to just have the natural knack from brain to paper.
Otherwise, like, big music labels wouldn't exist because artists could, like, do it all.
Yeah, exactly.
But truthfully, like, a lot of the time, there's a marriage of that kind of intellectualism or like thought process oriented person and the action oriented person who can make things happen.
Yeah, and so I think that it's more of like, oh, what is it in my chart that's making it so that I can't really, do that. I think it's less like, oh, this aspect is making it, but as you don't have this aspect, you don't have these things, rather than this thing that's causing a blockage, if that makes sense.
Where, I would say that something like a harmonious Neptune-Mercury aspect is something that can
or
bring that
harmonious
out.
Mercury-Mars. That could actually help that go straight from paper to pen kind of situation. Or a very, even Uranus or Neptune or Venus or something like that could help out, but I don't think there's anything in your chart that says, like, you can't, but there's nothing in your chart that really says you can.
Yeah. More about your Mercury square Mars is that this is kind of something that will make you act without thinking or just be a little more brash in the way
I'd say
you
speak without thinking.
Yeah, speak without thinking.
Because I think before I act, because I have this aspect, but I don't think before I speak.
And that could be another thing that you might find is interfering in your interpersonal relationships. Like this is something that can mean that the way that you talk can rub people the wrong way. And also
just like the way that you say things rubs people the wrong way without maybe you realize it, maybe you don't, but you just kind of say things and it's just brash.
Yeah, or dramatic and exaggerates things.
Especially Mercury and Libra.
Yeah, Mercury and Libra likes to hype things up.
Yeah,
and in the ninth house, you're like, Jupiter.
I kind of like this. I love it.
Yeah.
But you only kind of like it if you can have formed an opinion yet. But you're out here being like, it's my favorite!
Yeah. We have Mercury in Capricorn, which squares Mercury and Libra, so this is kind of an aspect that we're just like...
Yeah, I'm sorry, this isn't a drag, but... Anyways.
And then you have your Mars in Cancer. So this really does speak to not being a very energetic, physically person and not really having a go-getter attitude.
It's a lot more complacent, and I think back in our Mars and Cancer video, and I think that we missed out on something big, which is just the defensiveness. I'm sure we mentioned it, but I feel like I was like, Mars and Cancer, like, they're not aggressive people, like, no, these people are just gonna cry all the time. But when I would think about Mars and Cancer or Mars and Cancer celebrities and stuff, I'm like, they don't seem pretty, like, these are not passive people.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand. I don't think of Cancer as an aggressive sign at all. But I think just what it is it's just always on the defense.
Yeah.
It's never attacking. Ever.
It would be defensive or passive aggressive.
Yeah. Passive aggressive.
But not passive aggressive as in, like, we are Mars and Libra, so our passive aggressive is to, like, put on a happy face and be like, oh, it's fine. And then to go to Otis and talk shit about what just happened to each other and let off steam speaking. Yeah. But you don't have that kind of let off steam by X, Y, and Z. Like, we let off steam by speaking. You don't have that.
Right.
You just take your little jabs with your pincers when you can. You're passive aggressive in that way. When you're defending yourself, you'll just like take the jabs where you
At
can.
wherever you can.
But you're not going to, you're not going to lay back and like forget about it, but you're not going to be super active about it because it's a defensive sign.
Yeah. What's interesting though is Mars in Cancer, I think, is kind of let me explain. It's a selfish Mars in the sense in that when it's angry, it's not thinking about how the words affect the other person. It's not thinking about it. It's thinking only about how it affects, how those words affect them.
How they're feeling.
And how it's affecting them. But what's interesting is that it's in the 7th house. So it's very contradicting because the 7th house Mars is always not wanting to get angry because it upsets the balance of what everyone else, and that adds to your passive aggressiveness. So I feel like you could be very defensive, and you just kind of naturally, because your sun is squaring your sun, or your Mars is squaring your sun and it's opposite your ascendant. So you probably will say things that are more combative than you realize, and you'll immediately backtrack once they're said, because that Libra will come out. You'll be like, da, 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 and then they'll be like, hey, and you'll be like, oh no, da, 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 you know?
Then also, Mars in the 7th house can mean that that's where you let out your anger one-to-one, or even in relationships. Like for whatever reason, you find that you just get mad more easily at your partner. And like that's where you're aggressive, where you aren't normally. Like with Mars in the 4th house, we are not usually aggressive, especially being Mars in Libra. And then with our family, for some reason, we become more combative. We become more like...
It brings out that like...
So you can find that when you get into a relationship with someone, you kind of take it out on them for whatever reason. You don't know why. Maybe you just feel more comfortable with them, so you let loose in that aspect, which is another thing that can, inhibit you in relationships.
Because you'll seem like a super sweet guy, nothing like is really getting to you, and then immediately in a relationship, you'll take all your anger and frustration and put it on the other person, and they're like, what? What?
And then talking about, your motivation and, going after things, it's just very hard for you to call to action. It is a cardinal sign, but it's still the cardinal sign that thinks the most in the past.
It's going in a direction, and that direction is probably backwards.
And so you become, overly protective, and this is a sign or a placement that can lead to insecurity, and because of that insecurity, you put more walls up. And
you're very fiercely protective of your close ones, though.
But what you fear the most is loss or feeling vulnerable. And you know how they say like slow and steady wins the race? That is, that's Taurus. With Cancer, it's slow, but it's not steady.
Right.
It's just slow.
Because it's just going based off of what you're feeling. And
there's no fire to like ignite you when you're not necessarily feeling it. It's just like, it's so easy to just get like trapped in this mugginess and this wateriness, and like, the sand that's like just been like hit by the wave, but like it's like it's not like wet, it's just like damp and muggy. Like you can get stuck in that sand.
So it's just hard to get up and go, and especially because getting up and going is putting yourself out there, and Mars in Cancer doesn't really like putting themselves out there. Venus in the 8th house does not like putting themselves out there. That's more for relationships, but anyways. And
then what's gonna ignite your anger is anything that triggers you into feeling vulnerable.
Right, and that's a lot of things as a Mars in Cancer. Anything that's towards you, about you, your family, your loved ones, the ones you protect, that's triggering it. And that's like almost everything said ever. Anyways, I want to touch on Sun square Mars, because I think that this is just quickly an aspect that I wrote about. What's interesting though is a Sun square Mars person normally has this restless energy to them, this competitiveness, this me first attitude, this like me against the world, even especially with like Mars opposite ascendant, and I think it's really like me against the world, and it makes you a bundle of energy, but I feel like you don't know where to put that energy, and that bundle of energy is probably like emotional energy rather than like and with more emotional energy, just kind of that weighs you down, and that takes you down mentally, so it's hard to get any physical energy when you're mentally always drained. And you probably get frustrated by your Mars because your sun wants everything to be in balance, but then your Mars is so sensitive. And you're like, oh, I'm so diplomatic as a person. Why do I get butthurt about these things? And why do those things make me angry? Because my logical, diplomatic brain that I have with this air, sun, and moon says, you're fine. But something about you gets so sensitive about little nitpicky things and stuff.
A huge Libra trait is wanting things to be fair. And another huge Libra trait is to question yourself in the lens of, is this fair? So... and that's why Libra and Cancer square. It's because Libra is, everything's fair, everything's logical, and Cancer is not logical at all. It leads completely by the heart. It leads, it's up and down and just like how you feel. So to have these two things squaring is like, it's really hard for you, especially with the tendency to detachment. It's very hard for you to kind of accept this sensitive side of you, these emotional leanings.
Capricorn does not want to do that. Plus, you want to put on this front that like nothing can infiltrate you, but everything can infiltrate you.
You've got so much cardinal energy that is just like, it's not really working together very well because it's charged through Capricorn rising, balance everything out, Libra sun, and then Mars and Cancer is like, whoa, what the fuck is happening?
It's just like,
how do I feel?
And you're like, how do I feel?
And then your Capricorn rising is like, I don't feel, I just go.
I do this, I do that.
And then your Libra sun is like, I need to feel calm, I need to feel harmonious, I need everything to be fair. And so it's just like,
and your Capricorn rising is like, and your Cancer Mars like, but it's never fair towards me.
Yeah. And it's like, no, but it's not reasonable to think that way because I got like Mercury conjunct my sun, and I'm just like, I'm an intellectual person, and then my moon is in Aquarius, so like constantly, moon in Aquarius is always like analyzing how they feel as well, and intellectualizing is the word. Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times you don't know how you feel, but you know what's right because you have an Aquarius moon.
Yeah.
Sun in Libra in the 9th house. Well, we've talked quite a bit about your Sun in Libra. Anything else that you want?
So just people-oriented, intellectual, like things that you obviously know
Sun
about yourself.
conjunct Mercury adds to that. Kind of just constant mental stimulation.
Yeah, you're also like this combination of your Libra Sun in the 9th house really emphasizes rules and ethics and morals being a big part of your life. The big thing that occupies your brain is things being fair, things being ethical, things being righteous. And you also have this craving to understand yourself and the world around you, having your sun in the 9th house. It also just makes you a very tolerant person and curious and someone who's like kind of looking for stimulation, but it comes from mental. And maybe that is what upsets you about being a more mental person rather than a physical, because you do have like some fire in you with your sun in the 9th house of like, looking for stimulation and stuff like that. But it's just not supported by the rest of your Mars. Because lots of people will be like, shrug and be like, yeah, I'm just a more mental person than a physical person.
Right. But there's a part of you that wants to be a physical person because there is a part of you that is like a little bit restless with those Mars squares, right? With the Mars squares in opposition that makes you like, but you don't have any real place to put that energy because Mars in Cancer just wants to put it to emotions, but you don't want to put it towards emotions. That's not logical. Right.
I think the key really is to start with your interceptions.
Yeah.
To start with, I think consciousness is the key to everything, honestly.
Just own it, girl.
I think consciousness is the key to everything. And I'm an Aquarius, which means I'm right. Yeah, I think consciousness is the key, honestly, of just like understanding these things about yourself, not being an intercepted Saturn person about it, of being like, man, why is my chart like this? Why are these things working against me? Right. And just to, accept these things about yourself. Look into your progress chart as well to see the energies that will help you move forward and past these blockages. And as far as your restlessness that's happening with you versus your Mars kind of dragging you down, honestly, it's just about it's about actually asking yourself, how do you feel? Maybe just
Right.
like leaning more into the Cancer instead of, because it's in your 7th house, it's the one that you're gonna want to ignore and like not accept about yourself the most. You're going to want to identify more with your Libra-ness and more with your Capricorn-ness. And I think it will actually behoove you to act more like a Mars in Cancer in order for it to not...
I see what you're saying.
You
So
know?
able to connect almost with your moon that's intersected too, and to get in touch and stop. Yeah, it's really hard to find a balance between the Libra and the Cancer, but I think that's where a lot of success, and yeah, and Nina always says like, take control of the, what's the word, the earlier sign?
Yeah, so Leo first, you know?
Yeah, figure
your
out
identity.
who you are at the core before you figure out who you are.
Yeah, build up a sense of confidence, because that's what it's about. It's Leo comes before Aquarius because you need to build up that sense of confidence. You need to build up that ego in order to be able to embrace the quirkiness, the weirdness,
your inner self or whatever.
Yeah, in order to like
not even just your individuality.
Yeah,
you have to have your confidence first.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I want to see what I touched on. I touched on some moon aspects quite a bit. So your moon is trine your Pluto, and this I think in a weird way adds to your Capricorn rising, because you kind of want life to be emotionally challenging and you want life to be demanding, and you can get bored if you don't see these things you have to work towards. And like, in order to feel alive, like in order to feel emotionally alive, you have to almost be like going through some sort of trauma. Because I know trines are good, but like any trine with Pluto is intense. And so maybe it's good that you're constantly going through these emotional transformations, but like you need to be doing that to be able to feel anything. You have to be going through these intense emotional things to be feeling anything. So you probably have gone through spouts where you feel empty, or you're like almost searching for something intense, just for the sake of searching for something intense.
Exactly, like you get into these periods where everything just seems to be going fine, and then you're like, but no, hold on, there's something, you know, that restlessness, but in an emotional way, of, you know, just, you could even miss the hard parts of your life. You're like, at least I felt something back then.
Because you're constantly digging for answers. You're just a very honest person, and you expect the same emotional honesty that you give from others. It's not always the case, though. You don't always get that, right? Yeah, and just makes you very sensual and emotional, right? Okay. Your moon is sextile your Neptune, and this always causes a little bit of an upset with the moon, because moon is already unstable. So whenever it comes into any contact with Neptune, it just like emphasizes
it gets more woozy
to the most nth degree. And it's weird having such a fixed moon but on the first house, but then kind of a little bit unstable, but it makes you very compassionate and understanding.
That's another counselor
that's
indication.
What I was going to say. It's a big counselor indication, and especially with specifically the sextile versus any other aspect, because this makes it a little bit easier for it to not be constantly bogging
It's
you
a
down.
softer contact, a sextile is. A trine will get them closer together, because, you know, a trine is a 30 degree, whereas a sextile is a 60 degree, so they're a little more separated, but they're in contact. So they're not interfering, they're not living in such close quarters, you know? They're roommates, but they have their own bedroom and their own bathroom, and, you know, good door separating everything, and they're on opposite schedules. They just live together.
But you can get sudden hunches and feelings that come out of nowhere, and I think that's what activates your Mars as well. And that does give a little bit of a definitely more sensitive side to you, and you're definitely, I don't see this as an escapist. So if I saw this aspect on somebody that was like had 12th house stuff like the dragon we just did, I'd be like, oh, this adds to it. But I think that this adds some well-needed Neptune to your chart in a healthy way. I
think like you have a healthy dose of like, it's just combating a more workaholic type A personality. So you know how to, at the end of the day, take a bath and watch a movie.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know when to relax.
Moon square Uranus. So this talks even more to you being uncomfortable with your individuality, and you kind of rejecting the Aquarius moon in you almost, because I think that we can kind of accept and reject in different forms, come out in different things, and this just is a contradictive aspect in you.
This sign language for aspects.
That's the square. That's a square in my head.
No, to me this is a sextile. This is a trine. This is a square. But I don't know, because that's
not
how
a
it's
square. That's like an opposition.
Oh right, this is an opposition. This is a square.
You know what? We got it. Okay. Because you want closeness, but yet you need your space, and you don't want to get too close to anybody, and you're very fleeting things, fleeting emotions, but yet they're fixed, and you get stuck on them. So it's just you're a walking contradiction when it comes to your emotions, right? Daily routines are really stifling to you, I think, and I think a lot of your chart speaks to that. And this just adds even more of a restlessness.
You just don't want mundanity.
Yeah.
You don't want things to be mundane. You can get pretty depressed if things just keep happening the same way over and over. Because again, you have this restlessness in your chart.
Yeah,
and this is just another part of it.
Yeah, so you probably need to find an outlet for all this restlessness, because it's not anything physical, and that might kind of be why you said that, and because that might kind of annoy you, because you're like, when people say the restlessness, they say to like get it out through like, anger, like boxing or something, but like I don't want to do that. It's not an inner anger, it's like an inner restlessness. Yeah.
I think because you have a lot of Mercury and air stuff, it could be talking. And honestly, like talking about how you're feeling, because you have that Mars in Cancer. So I would say to talk, to write, to journal, to just like be interested. Like restlessness can come out and anxiety can come out because of things that you're ignoring, because of things that you're not letting come out in the air, up in the open. And so I think just taking more personal inventory could help.
And then something that you have is your moon is squaring your midheaven, and I find that this makes it very hard for people to find a career that they can emotionally attach to and that they feel emotionally fulfilled by, because they feel this obligation to have this career that their midheaven satisfies, and that is a big part of their want to be seen as this way, but yet that's not happy with who they are.
Yeah, you were just brought up probably, and a lot of people are, I think, and this type of conditioning stuck with you, that career and emotions are separated. You have your personal life and you have your career, and you follow your career to have some kind of financial and like Capricornian stability and status, and that it shouldn't be on the same page as your emotions, because that's your home life. I think that's a very like typical structure of it, which in reality, at least our generation, millennials, don't think that way.
Yeah, and so your midheaven is in Scorpio, so that's probably why people are like, you should be a counselor.
Yeah.
You can really dig deep into people. You must be so emotionally deep, or something like that, and the serious but you're just kind of like, what? I don't know if I could handle all that. I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, that's why you're looking for a little more confirmation.
People expect this of me because I'm not this Scorpio person, I'm this Aquarius person, but like I don't want anybody to know that I am.
So you do put on the Scorpio-ness of, it's another shell. It's a smoky, mysterious, veil to hide stuff.
Yeah, a facade. Yeah, and I also want to touch on your Venus, which is in Libra in the 8th house. So you might have watched your Venus in Libra video and been like, I don't just, pick off people and do that kind of stuff. Like, I can't relate to that at all. That's because of all your 7th house, all the shit we talked about already. And your Venus is in your 8th house, so you're not about to get close to anybody soon. But you're going to know a lot of people, but you're not going to get close to them.
Or you're just going to selectively pick who you're going to get close to. I'd actually recommend, maybe watching our Venus in Scorpio video and not taking it fact for fact.
Well, you do have Venus conjunct Pluto.
Yeah.
So I think that will
you might relate to some
with
things
a lot of
in there. Yeah.
Yeah, so that just adds an even more intensity to your Venus, and I just don't think you're someone, especially with a Mars in Cancer, that's going to go through a lot of deep relationships, that's going to go through a lot of sexual relationships.
And that's like not even necessarily a thing about Venus and Libra. It's just a manifestation of it that we touched on in our video.
Yes. But your Venus is also squaring Jupiter, and whenever anything's squaring Jupiter, it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah. Because Jupiter is a very beautiful planet.
Yeah.
But a square is the worst aspect.
Yes. And so it gives you this big-hearted and much more warm and open personality and just very loving and giving, right? But you want to be loving and giving. Mm-hmm. But with the square, you kind of promise more than you give.
Yeah, a lot of Jupiter square really points to overindulgence, over everything, you know? Overstating.
Just not following through on promises.
Yeah. Even being
overestimate your capacities.
Yeah.
You, especially as a Capricorn rising, you could take on a billion things at once and go, oh shit, I shouldn't have taken all this on, my bad, I can't do it all, oh, I don't want to tell anyone, Libra, I'll just try to figure it out, and then I'll wind up disappointing everyone in the end. And the people will be like, why didn't you ask for help sooner? And you're like, what are those? Asking for help, you probably don't like to.
Especially with Saturn intercepted.
Yeah, a Capricorn rising does not like to ask for help. You could also even live beyond your means, so just be cautious about spending.
Yes. And again, another overspending.
Oh yeah, so Saturn in Leo. So to go back
to your Saturn
a bit, specifically Saturn in Leo, this just makes you disciplined about your self-expression. So that just hammers in your
drives the point home
even more.
Yeah.
Not only is it not something that you can access, but you also don't even have the...
If you were able to access, you would still restrict it.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So it's like extra layers of prison on Leo-ness for you.
So you have this inner diva that wants to come out, and it does come out, but at the worst of times and the worst of ways, and in the most random of ways.
And then what's happening is whenever you express that, it bites you in the ass.
Yes.
You know, that's Saturn in a nutshell.
Your inner diva comes out and it fucks you up.
Yeah, whatever your Saturn is, you know, it's the energy that you have the hardest time expressing, and then when you do is when you get shit for it.
Yeah. And so this also points to you having problems with being an action-oriented person, and you having trouble keeping your attention, and just being somebody... just being physically like, because it's a fire sign. So whenever you start a fire sign, it kind of makes it harder to start things, right? It can make you a little bit accidentally selfish, Saturn and Leo. And this is you know, people within 3 years also have this. So you probably had a lot of selfish people around you. Whenever anybody showed their inner diva, it was shut down. And you probably also learned by looking at everyone around you, like, don't do that. That's not good. Whenever you show your inner diva, you get shit for it. Like, I can't be huge. I can't, you know, have the spotlight shine on me. I see what happens to everyone else.
Or I can't even be like, hey, no, it's going to be my way, you know?
Right.
Because that's something like...
especially 7th house.
It could be a difficulty that you have, that a lot of people around your age range have, of, you know, you just constantly are being forced out of the Leo position. You know, you say, hey, I want this, and someone says, well, I'm not really in the mood, and that's the end of it, you know? Then it comes to the point where you say, hey, I want this. Other person says, not really in the mood for it, let's do something else. And you're like, no, I want this. And then all of a sudden, you are being so selfish. You are only thinking about yourself, and it's like, yeah, Saturn sucks.
Yeah, so that's kind of your issues. But all you want is admiration and respect, right? But that's going to have a lot of trouble coming to you. And also, I think Saturn and Leo can't take a joke on themselves.
Yeah.
You can't really laugh at yourself, especially with Mars in Cancer. You just... your ego gets touched very easily, which is weird because you kind of don't have that in you. But yet it gets touched all the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like... Oh yeah, you have Pluto in the 8th house, which I think is one of the toughest combos, because Pluto is so intense and the 8th house is so intense, right? It should you think, oh, rules the 8th house, it's gonna be happy. No. This
Pluto isn't happy anymore.
No, I know, but it should be comfortable there. No, it honestly, people with this placement, they've had some sort of sexual trauma or some sort of something going on, and
it could have happened in your lifetime or in past lifetimes.
Right.
There's a lot that's speaking to you about relationships and sex and
yeah, because it's in Libra, it is probably very relationship, other person driven. But yes. Oh, and also another reason why you're more mentally inclined, sorry to go backwards, I didn't really do this, but your Jupiter's in your 6th house, and so that just expands
the house of Virgo.
Yeah, the Virgo house. So this makes you just more intellectually inclined. You kind of probably, like, when you're at home, you probably like having this grand routine.
Yeah, we said earlier that, like, routine can, fuck with you, that you can feel down in the dumps. But I think organization is the key.
And because it's Jupiter, it doesn't like to be like, I do this, this, and this. It's like, I want to have my routine on a grand scale, almost. And like, you kind of want it to be ever-changing, but you need it to always be there. And it kind of definitely gives you a little bit more anxiety. When you have any planet in the 6th house, it gives you a little bit more anxiety. But it makes you a good worker.
Yeah, a good worker, an organized person, and a person of servitude.
And yes, and especially because it's in Cancer, this talks again to the counselor, because Jupiter in Cancer it's exalted, and you get your luck from mutual nourishing, if that makes sense.
Nurturing.
Whoa, what did...
Nourishing.
Yeah. Mutual emotional...
Nurturing.
You get your luck from mutual emotional nurturing. So, like, if you give to someone, like, if you're a counselor situation and you give them, like, the time, right, to listen to their problems, to help them out, then what you'll get is somebody doing the same for you. Or it's solving your own issue. Just, you know what I mean? You kind of get what you give in the intimacy realm.
Yeah, because Cancer is ruled by the moon. It's reflective.
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing is reflecting back onto you.
Yes.
It's truly like you acting towards people, nurturing them, is satisfying something in you that needs to be healed.
Yeah.
That's why it's exalted.
Yeah, and it's a very, like, you really get what you give out. Like, it's a very, I think, karmic placement. So if Jupiter, I think, can work in both ways. If you give shit, then you're gonna get shit, right? But if you
give not shit,
yeah,
and sparkles.
Yeah, and if you give sparkles, and people might be like, you're so lucky, but it always comes from you doing something positive. So really plant those seeds, because you really will get rewarded from what you give to people, right? And then, so your North Node is in Libra, in the 9th house, conjunct your Sun. So this just emphasizes your fucking
relationships.
Well, your Leo interception more.
Yeah.
Like, you need to learn how to be your ego, because your North Node is right, like,
right on top of your Sun.
Right on fucking top of your Sun. So you really need to learn. It's kind of contradicting, because you need to learn yourself, but you also need to learn other people. So you kind of got a double whammy.
What I would say is I'd approach it from I need to know, and this also has to do with your interception, is start with the Leo.
Yes.
Start with the self.
Please don't start with the Libra.
Yeah. Start
will
with
never help.
I am me. I love myself. I'm confident in myself. And by having a good relationship with myself is when I'm in a healthy position to be in a relationship with someone else.
Right, and then you can learn the ins and outs of that relationship, which will satisfy your Aquarius, which will satisfy your 7th house, you know what I mean? So it really is just... It sounds like a big task, but it at the same time is really concentrated.
Yeah, what it seems to me in judging your chart and judging your North and South Node, your South Node being in Aries, I would say that the relationship trauma that you're experiencing now doesn't have to do with a past life. It has to do with compensating for a past life in which you were very selfish, in which you were very headstrong leader, and honestly, having it be Mars and looking at your chart now, I would say that it was, a bit more destructive. Like, you were a destructive kind of leader, very fiery person, and you're kind of what this life is kind of doing to you in quite an aggressive way is hitting you with a bunch of relationship issues, so that you are focused on working on those, and by working on those and also by working on yourself, you get to a place where you healthily approach relationships, you healthily reach that North Node in Libra.
But I don't think, like you said, that can't be done until you figure out who you are. And that's not who you are in an Aries way.
Yeah.
Though, and that's kind of hard to distinguish because your first impulse might be, who I am, let's figure it out. I'll just steamroll through everyone. Me, selfish. But that's your last life, and that's what you want to do, and that's exactly what you shouldn't do.
Yeah, which is why this current life gave you Saturn and Leo.
Yeah.
It's to keep you away from that me, and to approach it more from a self-love kind of thing.
Yes. My camera's being annoying, but we were pretty much done anyways. So the point is to channel that Leo, not the Aries.
Self-love,
Libra, self-love, but love with everyone else, right? Anyways, we always like to hear what you think down below. If you agree, disagree, thoughts.
Yeah, also since this video will be public, you can also email us your thoughts. Because usually you're like the only person who can comment, and so we can read it and all that. But you can email us your thoughts, or you can comment if you want to do that. You can do whatever you want.
It's your life.
Yeah. And if you're not Adam and you got to the end of this video, wow.
That's really nice. Anyways, so thank you so much, Adam, for supporting us and purchasing a reading. It means so much to us, and we really appreciate it. Yes, anyways.
Yeah, so feel free to ask us any questions. Let us know what you think. Bye. Thank you.